Have you ever felt the ground shift beneath you, as if destiny itself decided to yank open a hidden door? That's what happened in the Kane family mansion one stormy afternoon, when a clash between compassion and suspicion threatened to tear an entire legacy apart. The parlor, usually a sanctuary of antique calm, was suddenly ravaged by Dorian Kane's entrance. His voice, a weapon honed by boardroom wars, thundered through the stained glass and mahogany, freezing everyone in their tracks. "What the hell are you doing with my father? Have you no shame?" The force of those words was enough to shatter the delicate peace Maya William had been nurturing for months. Maya instinctively tightened her arms around Samuel Kane, the patriarch she cared for, whose life had slowed to the delicate rhythm of old age and illness. He was wearing nothing more than a thin nightshirt, drenched with sweat from the rare exercise Maya had coaxed him into, a few hopeful steps across the living room, a symbol of resilience more than recovery. When Samuel's knees buckled, Maya caught him, their bodies close out of necessity, not intention. But Dorian, arriving without warning, saw none of this context and was blinded instead by a storm of misunderstanding. "Filthy little snake," he spat, eyes ablaze. "Is this what you do now? Throw yourself at a helpless old man? Disgusting." Maya tried to raise her voice, her defense thin in the face of such rage. "Mr. Kane, please, it's not—" But Dorian was relentless, not interested in explanations. He saw only a tableau of betrayal, where compassion could only be camouflaged deceit. Maya managed to ease Samuel back into his wheelchair, her hands trembling as Dorian closed in. The butler, the cook, even a gardener at the threshold, witnessed the spectacle. Judgment formed like storm clouds, and whispers began to swirl. Dorian's fury escalated, painting Maya as a gold digger and manipulator, a threat where there was only care. A shove sent Maya sprawling, pain and humiliation making her cheeks burn, not with shame, but with righteous anger. In a house as old and storied as the Kane estate, rumors had more legs than the vines climbing over its brick walls. Those who had witnessed Dorian's outburst retreated to corners where they could murmur and speculate. "She's always alone with Mr. Kane for hours. God knows what else she's done." The kitchen staff, maids, and even junior housekeepers shared glances, their eyes wide with alarm, their voices just loud enough to turn suspicion into supposed fact. Maya sat up slowly, her breath unsteady, blood trickling down her arm where she'd hit the table. Anger, not embarrassment, blazed in her chest. None of these onlookers knew what had really happened earlier that day. Samuel Kane, determined to reclaim some part of his independence, had asked Maya gently, "Let's try again today. Just a few steps if you're willing." She had helped him with patience, supporting his faltering body with care, wiping sweat from his brow, and catching him before he could fall. But compassion was twisted in the eyes of those who chose not to look deeper. Dorian grabbed Maya's hair, yanking her down, the physicality of the act punctuating the emotional violence. "You're finished here," he growled. "Get your things and go. If you come near my father again, I'll call the police," Maya sobbed in disbelief. "Please, I need this job. My mother is sick. I have nowhere else to go." Her desperation fell on deaf ears. But Samuel stirred, finding a voice that had been dormant for weeks. "Let her go, Dorian!" That protest was stronger than anything he'd managed recently, the fight reigniting something within him. The room fell silent, the echo of Samuel's defense changing the air. Dorian faced his father, sweat beading at his temple. "You don't know what she was doing," he muttered. But Samuel, his pride wounded by more than illness, spoke clearly. "She was helping me. The staff was cut. The agency dropped my therapist, and she's the reason I can still feel my legs." The truth hung heavy as Dorian momentarily faltered. The image of Maya's hands, steady, deliberate, casting doubt on his judgment. And I apologize to the author for interrupting this story. I mean, I would be very pleased if my listener would like, subscribe, and leave their thoughts on this story in the comments. I won't delay you any longer. Enjoy. Disappointment radiated from Samuel Kane's face, not from weakness, but from something deeper. A betrayal not by Maya, but by his own son. "I didn't raise you to be this," Samuel declared. The meaning cut through the silence. Dorian, stunned by his father's rebuke, stood motionless as Maya scrambled up, her dignity bruised, her pride demolished. She fled the room, racing past the whispering staff, through the heavy silence that only guilt can create. Outside, rain had slowed to a mist, but inside the mansion, storms brewed stronger than ever. In his father's study, Dorian found himself at the window, arms crossed, jaw locked, watching the world grow smaller and more complex. Behind him, the room remained subdued, haunted by what had occurred. The house manager, Alan, lingered in the doorway, uncertain. "Should I escort Miss William out?" Dorian's answer was cold. "She'll leave when she's ready. I'm not running a prison." Alan's suggestion to contact the agency was brushed off. She broke more than her contract. "She broke trust," Dorian said, his words slicing the quiet like a razor. Turning to the family portrait above the fireplace, Dorian confronted images of simpler times. Samuel, decades younger, smiled alongside his late wife, and a much younger Dorian looked up with pride. The man Dorian had become was armored in cynicism and hardened by betrayal. Yet even as he tried to convince himself of his judgment, the memory of Maya's hands, the very opposite of seduction or manipulation, haunted him. Downstairs, Maya moved slowly, her old suitcase sitting half-filled on the edge. She lingered over a framed photo of her mother back in Georgia, the woman she'd sent money home to every month. Working for the Kanes represented survival, not privilege. And now, even that lifeline was being severed. A gentle knock interrupted Maya's turmoil. Not stern, but knowing. She opened the door to find Samuel Kane, more slumped than usual, wheeled in by Alan at his request. His voice was weak, but unwavering. "Had to see you before you go." He glanced around her room. The scent of lavender and starch mingling with the soft light of a bedside lamp. Samuel handed Maya a folded paper, an updated rehab schedule from Dr. Clean. "You followed this better than the last 3 specialists," he admitted. Maya hesitated, not wanting to revisit wounds. Samuel sighed, reflecting on his failures. "He's afraid," Samuel said. "Not of you, of himself, of what he saw and how it made him feel." He confessed that he thought parenting was about providing tools, money, and legacy, but neglected discernment, the ability to truly see character. Maya finally accepted the paper, folding it neatly. "You shouldn't be here, Mr. Kane. You need rest." But Samuel, with eyes damp from emotion, replied, "So do you." Upstairs, Dorian stood at the staircase's top, haunted by echoes below. Regret warred with conviction in his mind. Was he truly defending his father, or merely clinging to his own need for control? He descended the stairs, heart heavier for each step, drawn to the light beneath the guest room door, where voices, calm and honest, competed with his self-doubt. He listened silently as Maya asked, "Why didn't you defend me?" Samuel admitted he didn't have the words, that he had failed not just Maya, but his own son. Maya made her boundaries clear. She would not remain where respect was absent. Samuel, in a whisper, asked, "Will you give him time?" Maya's response was decisive. "Time doesn't cure rot, Mr. Kane. It only hides the smell." The weight of her words followed Dorian into the night. In the days that followed, Maya retreated to her room, packing slowly, as if sorting not just belongings, but memories, ones that didn't truly belong to her, yet had shaped her profoundly. Avoiding the staff and their whispers, she moved through the corridors with her head high, choosing silence over pleading, choosing dignity instead of explanation. Late one evening, she discovered a white envelope on her dresser, a note penned in Samuel Kane's precise cursive. "You changed my life more in 8 months than my son did in 40 years. If this house loses you, it loses its soul." She pressed the note to her chest, beyond tears, comforted by the truth it contained. When the next morning arrived, the Kane estate felt different. Not quieter, but charged with tension so dense that even the walls seemed to hold their breath. Maya dressed carefully, uniform pressed, hair tied back, and waited by the back door, suitcase ready, as if determination alone could grant her some grace in leaving. The only person who showed unswerving kindness was Rosalind, the head cook, who brought Maya a mug of chamomile tea. "Chamomile for the nerves," Rosalind offered, her presence warm and unjudging. "You don't have to be all right," she continued, seeing through Maya's armor. "But you do have to walk out with your head up." They shared this quiet strength, a bond built of survival. As Maya prepared to leave, a familiar voice beckoned her. Dorian Kane, standing in the doorway, not with arrogance, but discomfort and uncertainty. He entered, apology trembling in his posture. "I owe you an apology," Dorian began. The air was thick with years of authority, but today, something softer threatened to break through. "There are conversations that slip by like a breeze, and then there are those that thunder, changing everything they touch. This was one of the latter. Dorian stood before Maya, all bravado dissolved into hesitant humility. "I owe you more than an apology," he said at last, voice hoarse. "I let pride dictate what I saw. In this house, loyalty has always been currency, but I spent suspicion too freely." Maya gazed at him, her own heart guarded. She wondered if forgiveness was possible in a place where a single rumor could upend a person's life. She saw the tension bunching in Dorian's broad shoulders, the toll of sleepless nights etched in his eyes. Outside, sunlight danced on the window pane, but inside, everything was suspended, a fragile balance between redemption and resentment. "Why did you never ask me?" Maya finally spoke, each syllable deliberate. The question landed with weight. Dorian flinched, suddenly acutely aware of every misstep. "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid my father loved you more than he ever loved his own blood. Afraid to lose him while he was still here, and afraid to see how much you mattered to him when I could barely reach him myself." Maya's reply was even, but thick with emotion. He needed someone to see him, not just as a businessman who built an empire, but as a man who needed help. Sometimes care looks like love, but it isn't always the same. There were tears unshed in both of their eyes now, but neither let them fall. This was an exchange not merely of words, but of truths, too long buried beneath pride and pain. The mansion itself seemed to listen. The Kane family walls were accustomed to secrets, the laughter of long-gone parties, the sobs muffled behind bedroom doors, the proud speeches from the master study. But now, for perhaps the first time in years, they bore witness to healing. Dorian lingered, searching Maya's face for even the subtlest sign of forgiveness. He remembered childhood nights spent outside his father's study, eavesdropping on his parents' gentle arguments about love, legacy, and what it meant to truly serve others. He'd unlearned much of that in his own rise to power. Now, with Maya before him, he felt those forgotten lessons resurface. "My mother used to say that compassion is the foundation of any great house," Dorian shared reluctantly. "But somewhere along the line, I started believing that protecting the family meant keeping everyone out." Maya's gaze lingered on Dorian. She could sense the vulnerability behind his regret. "Your father lost a lot when she died, more than the world saw. He needs you, Dorian, but not the version of you that fights ghosts. He needs the son who remembers what kindness feels like." A distant bell chimed from the garden, as if signaling the end of something old and the beginning of something new. Dorian nodded slowly, a silent promise that he'd seek the presence, not just the power his family required. Before Maya could respond further, the quiet was broken by Samuel himself. Wheeled in by Alan, his voice rang out with more clarity than anyone had heard in months. "You two aren't the only ones learning lessons here," he declared, his words drawing their attention. Maya kneeled beside Samuel, her posture a blend of respect and concern. Dorian knelt opposite, finally close enough to see the frailty and determination etched in his father's face. Samuel gripped both their hands with unexpected strength. "Families break where communication fails," he said. "But it's not too late to mend." He looked at Maya with gratitude. "You protected my pride, Maya, when others treated it as worthless. You returned my dignity. My son," he turned to Dorian, "needs that lesson more than anyone." Dorian squeezed his father's hand, eyes misting over. For a moment, time seemed to pause, the generational wounds and misunderstandings finding a rare opportunity for healing in the quiet of that sunlit room. Maya felt the gravity. The ties between the Kane men had begun to fray long before she arrived, and now her own pain echoed theirs. She realized that forgiveness, like dignity, was not given freely. It would have to be earned, step by trembling step. The mansion's halls stretched long and heavy as Maya made her way to the waiting car, suitcase in hand. Her conversation with Dorian and Samuel lingered, every word a pebble in the river of her thoughts. The house staff watched from the corners, some offering brief nods of respect, others too entangled in gossip to meet her gaze. Rosalind, steadfast as always, intercepted Maya at the doorway. "Don't let this place change you," she whispered, pressing a small cloth-wrapped bundle into Maya's palm. A lunch for the road, a gesture of continued care. Maya's heart warmed, yet the uncertainty of the future stung. Every step toward the exit felt less like escape and more like exile. But then Alan rushed out, waving his arms. "Wait, please!" Maya paused, fatigue weighing down her movements. Alan handed her 2 envelopes, one imprinted with the family crest, the other a simple note from Samuel. "Mr. Kane asked me to make sure you got these," Alan said softly. The crest letter was unexpectedly formal. A severance offer far more generous than any contract promised. The accompanying note, written in Samuel's unsteady hand, read, "Forgiveness is messy, but sometimes family is found in unexpected places. If you ever need refuge, this place is yours." Maya's chest tightened. She hadn't anticipated such kindness, and for a moment, the walls of resentment she had built began to crumble. As she stepped outside, rain drizzled lightly. Not a downpour, but a gentle cleansing. A hint that new beginnings could follow stormy endings. Now standing at the front gate, Maya paused for one final look back. The estate loomed, familiar yet foreign. A kingdom of history and pain, memory and hope. She wondered what her absence would mean. Whether Dorian might finally step into the role Samuel needed. Whether the staff might remember her dignity and grace instead of rumor and scandal. A car arrived, its rumble a signal that the next chapter awaited. Maya hesitated, considering the crossroads before her. She possessed both invitation and closure, proof that the wounds of the past need not define the future. she felt the weight of Samuel's words, the echoes of Dorian's regret, and the warmth of Rosalind's care, all converging in her heart. The car door opened. Maya set her suitcase on the seat, and with a final deep breath, crossed the threshold of the past into the unfolding day. Her spirit was battered, but not broken. Memory sharpened by pain, yet softened by hope. As the car pulled away from the Kane mansion, the entire estate seemed to exhale, as if everyone within its walls, Samuel, Dorian, Rosalind, and even Alan, could sense the quiet possibility that forgiveness and change, though difficult, were now at last possible. The aftermath of Maya's departure lived in every shadow of the Kane estate. For the first time, the grand halls seemed somber, as if mourning the absence of a spirit that had quietly sustained them. The lessons bloom, grounding us all in heritage. The staff moved more carefully now, conversations muted. There was an air of introspection, a rare vulnerability that had seldom visited the mansion. Dorian found himself wandering the corridors late at night, haunted by insomnia and regret. The echo of Maya's dignity clung to the walls, making him question not just the moment he had failed her, but every instance he had chosen suspicion over compassion. He thumbed through old family albums, searching for a picture of himself that matched the pride his father once had in him. What he saw instead was a boy marked by loneliness, grasping at inherited power but longing for approval. Samuel withdrew into himself for days, refusing even his favorite meals or books. He waited for news from Maya, a postcard, a call, anything that would assure him that she had landed somewhere safe. He missed the daily ritual of being helped out of bed, the patience that Maya had shown him when others hurried him along to the world. Samuel Kane was still a titan of industry. To the people in his home, he was simply a man diminished by loss. Rosalind, too, felt the emptiness. Her kitchen quieted. Her jokes no longer echoed down the hallways. She began leaving fresh flowers in Maya's old room, so that whoever took her place might sense the warmth Maya left behind. Staff members debated what would happen next. Would the Kanes hire someone new? Or would the silence stretch on until it became unbearable? But underneath it all, a subtle change began, like a seed just breaking the surface. Maya's refusal to be shamed had started a quiet revolution. People were talking, not about scandal or disgrace, but about the possibility that honesty, even in pain, could heal families. The estate had lost its anchor, but somewhere new roots were forming. It is in loss that true gifts reveal themselves. Dorian, grappling with a sense of emptiness he had never known, began to write unsent letters to Maya. Each evening, seated at his mother's old writing desk, he poured out the words he wished he'd spoken. Apologies layered with longing, gratitude mixed with shame. The act was private, a ritual for healing himself as much as seeking Maya's forgiveness. He called several agencies, looking for someone to fill Maya's role, but none matched her devotion. The first candidate lasted only 2 days. The second left in tears, unable to bear Samuel's irritable mood and the lingering tension in the house. The family's broken trust became its own barrier. Nobody wanted to stay where compassion had been misread as mischief. Samuel, meanwhile, struggled with the boundaries between pride and vulnerability. His health fluctuated, but what hurt most was knowing he'd lost not just a helper, but a confidant, a person who saw his weaknesses and responded with dignity rather than pity. He reminded the staff daily to treat whoever came next with respect, but his heart remained anchored to the memory of Maya's gentle hands and steady presence. Rosalind maintained her vigil, leaving a mug of chamomile by Samuel's bed each night, a silent promise that care had not abandoned him, even as its shape had changed. Alan, the butler, began gathering stories from staff about the small kindnesses Maya had shown, hoping to collect them as if these moments of grace could somehow restore balance to the house. Forgiveness, they all discovered, was a journey. Dorian's pride, Samuel's wounded heart, the staff's divided loyalties, they were all searching for a way to turn loss into reconciliation. But as weeks passed, the hope of Maya's return became quietly woven into every gesture. A flower on a windowsill, a kind word at dinner, a door left open to possibility. Late one night, as rain pattered softly against the windows, a letter finally arrived, addressed to Samuel Kane. Maya's handwriting was careful, each word chosen not to reopen wounds, but to honor the courage it took to heal them. She wrote, "It's easy to say goodbye when pain pushes you out, but harder when kindness pulls you back. I keep wondering if dignity here was bought or if it was earned one difficult day at a time. I want you to know I forgive you, because I understand how fear can cloud the judgment of good people. Please do not blame your son too harshly for his mistake." Loss teaches as much as love. Samuel read the letter again and again, tears blurring the words. He gathered his strength and dialed Dorian late that evening. "Maya forgave us," he whispered. "Do you hear that, son? She forgave us." Dorian listened, the words thawing something long frozen inside him. He realized that his own journey was far from over. Forgiveness was not an end, but a door opening to deeper self-awareness. For the first time, he contemplated calling Maya himself. Alan, overhearing the exchange, quietly celebrated. "That's what a home should feel like," he murmured to Rosalind over morning tea. They both smiled, remembering a time when kindness needed no defense. Moved by Maya's grace, Samuel resolved to invite her back, not as staff, but as a friend. He instructed Alan to prepare her favorite room in the guest wing, filled with yellow roses and soft blankets. Dorian, still anxious, wrote a personal letter, promising that the judgment she had suffered would never return. Rosalind led the preparations, teaching the staff new rules about privacy and respect. "We are a family first," she insisted, "not just a business." When the staff hesitated, Alan backed her up, recalling Maya's courage and the way she had faced down adversity without bitterness. Samuel dictated his invitation with trembling hands. "Come home, Maya. Not to work, but to rest, to heal, and if you are willing, to help us mend what was broken." Maya received the invitation with mixed emotions. The scars from her last day at the mansion were deep, but the hope for true reconciliation shone brighter. She called her mother in Georgia, sharing the news. "I think I'm ready," Maya said quietly. Her mother's pride was evident even across the miles. "Sometimes returning is the bravest thing you can do," she replied. With a suitcase in one hand and her mother's blessing in her heart, Maya boarded a train north, wondering if this time mercy and dignity could truly coexist in the Kane estate. Maya arrived at the Kane estate on a crisp, clear afternoon. The staff, less wary now, more introspective, greeted her with honest smiles. Samuel was waiting by the front door, his hand extended in welcome, no longer frail, but fortified by hope. Dorian, standing beside his father, met Maya's gaze with humility. "This house is yours, as much as it is ours," he said, voice steady. An awkward silence shivered between them, then broke as Rosalind enveloped Maya in a warm embrace. Alan led Maya to her refreshed room, where yellow roses and chamomile tea awaited. The air was thick, not with old suspicions, but new intentions. Forgiveness was no longer a wish, but a practice, one chosen again and again. That evening, Maya, Samuel, and Dorian sat by the fireplace, speaking long into the night. They discussed every ugly truth and beautiful possibility. Samuel shared memories of love and regret. Dorian listened, learning to receive counsel, not just give it. Maya, honored and empowered, spoke of boundaries and healing. As midnight approached, the three finally understood. Dignity had returned to the Kane mansion, not just for its master, but for its caretakers and guests. Mercy would be the foundation, forgiveness the cornerstone. Together, they made a promise. Their future would be built from mistakes bravely faced and grace freely given. The days that followed Maya's return glowed with a gentle warmth, as if the Kane estate itself had decided to breathe easier. With Maya back in their midst, not as employee, but as an equal, the old patterns were gently broken. Morning tea in the garden replaced rushed, anxious breakfasts. Laughter began to stitch together conversations that once felt laced with fear. Samuel found his strength returning, not in the steady miracle of medicine, but in the renewing rhythm of real connection. Maya visited with him daily, sharing gentle encouragement and sharing stories of her mother's resilience, the kind that shaped Maya's own difficult courage. The staff watched in awe as the patriarch's mood improved, not only because his body healed, but because his spirit was no longer isolated by mistrust. Dorian, too. Larry began his day with him a promise, labored to lay new stones in the broken foundation of family. This time, He led with vulnerability. He invited Maya, Samuel, and even the staff into weekly meetings, not to discuss business, but to check in on each other, to bear witness to pain as much as to joy. These gatherings, awkward at first, began to drum up a deeper unity. The younger housekeepers, once wary of Dorian's temper, found him far more approachable. Rosalind's jokes echoed warmly, and Alan dared to dream that the mansion could finally feel like a home. One evening, as twilight painted the windows gold, Dorian shared with Maya the letters he'd written but never sent. They were raw and honest, filled with regret and hope, each page asking for forgiveness, but also offering it in return. Maya read them quietly, tears glimmering, not just for the past hurt, but for the courage it took to face oneself so completely. In this moment, the past was not erased, but transformed. Mercy, they realized, was not in the absence of pain, but in the willingness to meet it together. Rebuilding trust wasn't easy, but it was a journey the household chose each day. Samuel began to ask his son and Maya for help, sometimes for assistance with daily tasks, sometimes for companionship. Dorian, not wanting to repeat old mistakes, asked for feedback, listening instead of assuming. Trust, once lost and feared irretrievable, began to root itself in shared stories, quiet honesty, and a new policy of transparency. The staff received new training at Maya's suggestion. Not just practical skills, but lessons on empathy and respectful boundaries. Maya herself led the first talk, sharing her story, the pain, the resilience, and the eventual grace. Even the most skeptical housekeeper admitted, "She's got something we need." Alan suggested a new tradition. Every month, someone would share a lesson learned from kindness over tea, a way for everyone in the mansion to remember what matters most. The tradition stuck, offering a slow-growing change that fortified the old walls against future storms. Dorian, once fearful of vulnerability, now found himself writing to Maya's mother. In every email and call, he sought not only forgiveness on Maya's behalf, but also guidance on how to honor her daughter's courage. Her mother replied with wisdom shaped by hardship. Love is not letting go of someone's hand when they show you their wounds. Samuel gave her a place at the family table, her input considered vital in every decision. Dorian leaned on Maya's wisdom and learned to apologize, not out of obligation, but out of love. Their daily walks around the estate became rituals of renewal. One summer evening, the whole household gathered for a celebration, a new tradition called Mercy Night, born from Maya's journey. Everyone was invited to share their struggles and their breakthroughs. Samuel spoke, voice steady. "Many things broke us, but grace repaired us." Maya, you brought us home. For the first time in years, the Kane estate felt not like a fortress, but a sanctuary. A place where mistakes could be confessed, and forgiveness given room to breathe. Forgiveness does not erase the past, but it empowers the future. That was the lesson Maya, Samuel, and Dorian carried as the seasons cycled forward. Each faced new trials. Samuel's health faltered from time to time. Dorian confronted challenges at work. Maya received news her mother's illness had worsened. But now, no burden was shouldered alone. Dorian offered Maya paid leave to care for her mother, but Maya insisted on remaining part of the Kane household, working remotely and weaving care for her own family into every facet of her new life. Samuel funded her mother's medical care quietly, choosing mercy as his legacy. Maya shared every update with Samuel and Dorian, who listened, learned, and responded with unwavering support. Maya, once the outsider, became a bridge connecting the Kane legacy with new hope. The staff watched this alliance with gratitude and relief, knowing that if dignity and mercy could root in a house built on pride, perhaps every home could be changed. And each week, during the staff's sharing circle, stories of Maya's courage blossomed. She taught us the difference between service and servitude, Rosalind declared one evening, and that mercy, given freely, is strength, not weakness. The Kane mansion, battered yet renewed, stood as a testament to change. Maya came to see it not as a stage for pain, but as a home, her own as much as anyone's. The family's photo above the fireplace gained a new addition, a candid shot of Maya, Samuel, Dorian, and Rosalind around the table, laughter bright and unconditional. Samuel, now an old man unafraid of the truth, told guests, "Grace, not money, is our family's richest inheritance." Dorian, once armored in suspicion, became a community leader, championing honesty, vulnerability, and dignity in every arena. Maya, empowered by the resilience learned from her mother and the pain survived in the Kane household, became a voice for mercy, traveling to share her story with others who faced uphill battles for respect. Every day the estate pulsed with life, a living reminder that families are hardly shaped by blood alone, but by the wounds they mend and the hope they dare to trust. Mercy, forgiveness, and dignity. These, Maya realized, were the doors no storm could close. And as another sunrise gilded the Kane estate, Maya sipped her chamomile, listened for Samuel's gentle greeting, and smiled. She was home, not just in bricks and timber, but in the hearts she had helped to heal.